Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile, baby. I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile, baby. We look up in the sky and we can't see clear. Blue skies are gold and white lines up here. Them say it's natural, me not believe them. Them say it's vital, me not listen to them. Something strange is going on. Feel it in my heart, sensing something strong. Gotta save the future, put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it our best can. Stand around and be blind to the false can. Taking no more, how can they relax that? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile, baby. I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile, baby. Living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we all deserve the right to peace and opportunity.
This is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineering Watch.org radio for Saturday, December 6th. Our song got extended there somehow. We had it shortened so that we didn't drag on so long in the beginning, but we'll work on that. Good song, but we want to get right into what's happening because the hour goes quickly. We have Russ Tanner, Greg Balin with us today, as always. My thanks to both of them for participating in this show. We have a lot, as always, happening across the country. Changes absolutely constantly. The scheduled weather changing constantly. Why? Because when you play whack-a-mole, weather whack-a-mole with the climate system, bad things happen, and bad things are happening. We've had very dire news again out of the Arctic, and whenever we see that, there seems to be massive changes in the scheduled weather for all of us. We see that again now. So at the start of the season, all the predictions were, and they're not predictions, they're just simply scripts being read by those who do the bidding of the global elite who pull the levers in the global weather system. So we were told, same thing in the West Coast, dry, and the repeat of previous years, the previous 7 years, not just 3. But something's happened in the last month, at least in the scheduled weather. We've had more rain in the Northwest, in Northern California, not nearly as much as we should have, could have, and would have had if it were not for the constant aerosolization. It's a tongue twister. But we have had some. But the scheduled weather forecasts, even for the next 2 weeks, are profoundly different than previous years and profoundly different than what was scheduled only several weeks ago. Now it looks like they're going to let the moisture flow across the U.S. West. They're going to aerosolize it as they have been, at least that's what we've seen in the past. And that can change any given day. People need to understand that. Whenever there's a certain pattern, and we know certain things affect that pattern, it doesn't mean that pattern can't change on a dime if they stop doing the things that affect that pattern. And too many people, if you point out one observation to them, for example, the fact that aerosolization and radio frequencies can diminish the rain in the West, and they'll jump up and down and say, well, it rained here. Well, what does that mean? Someone posted on my blog again that it would be like, and I salute this person, it would be like saying, well, how can people be starving in Africa? My stomach's full. People have to think past their own window seal. So because it poured in San Francisco in a few places, it doesn't mean it poured all over the whole state. We got some decent rain in parts, but how much would we have gotten had they not aerosolized it? And we know they aerosolized it. I posted a blog with combination sat photos and visible images so people could see that most of the country was covered in largely rainless cloud. How does that happen? It's moisture from the west that was aerosolized, dispersed, scattered, and that doesn't mean it doesn't rain anywhere, or that if they stop aerosolizing at some part of the storm, that it's not going to start raining. Conditions change all the time, all the time. If the aircraft are someplace else dumping their toxic load, then we get a little rain in the west. So again, people have to understand there's no absolutes in this equation at all. So now we see forecasts for very protracted warming in the U.S., not like previous years. What's happened? Well, bad news out of the Arctic again. They can't steal the air from the Arctic for the polar vortex as they've been doing, because people are starting to notice now the alarm is going off. We have a multitude of frontline scientists saying, if something doesn't change, we're all done. So this refrigerator effect, if you will, what happens when you open the refrigerator? Again, cold air pours out, warm air pours in. That's the effect you have. Same thing happens when you push cold air out of the Arctic to create an engineered cooling event in the eastern U.S., which unfortunately a lot of people in the climate engineering community don't recognize, or the anti-climate engineering community don't recognize as being engineered, because they seem to accept all those sort of cold events as being natural, proving the planet is cooling, which is absolute nonsense. And I hope that changes. I simply hope that changes, because if people in our community don't investigate, if they just keep marching with their ideology, how is that credible? How is that any different? I know I've said this before, but I have to say it again. How is that any different than those who accept what the power structures told them, that these are just condensation trails you're seeing, and never do a bit of research? How are we any different if we're in that category? I hope people in our community start to actually investigate and look at what's engineered, look at the actual occurrences around the globe from the ground. You don't have to believe NASA or NOAA or any of those organizations. Look at what's happening on the ground. We have film footage of this happening. There should be no debate about certain issues. There should be no debate about what we see in the sky being sprayed particulate trails, because we have film footage of it happening. There should be no debate about the melting of the cryosphere around the globe, because we have film footage of it happening. So, again, I hope people actually do research, because otherwise we are no different than those in other camps that march forward with an ideology not based on fact, not based on sound conclusion, just based on ideology and what they want to believe. I don't want to be in that camp, and I won't be, and I don't care how unpopular it is. I don't care. I absolutely don't care. I will stand on credible data no matter how much resistance I get. I don't care. The truth will always be the truth. Ideology will change with the blowing of the wind. I won't stand in that camp. Now, we did 2 sit-ins yesterday. It rained a bit, but that didn't matter to the 70 or 80 people that showed. We should have had several hundred. But to stand with 70 or 80 people that had the heart to show up was uplifting. It was very uplifting. I'm sorry for the people who didn't have the heart to show up, and we have a lot of those who, whenever they're in the mood, they'll jump up and down and complain. But as soon as they're out of the mood, they're back to their own personal pursuits of pleasure. It's not going to get the job done. But the courageous people that were there got a lot done yesterday. And again, my heart goes out to every single one of them. Some of them drove 7-8 hours to get here. And I'm grateful for them, extremely grateful. And I'm honored to stand with them on the street in the rain in front of a very hostile media institution. One, the Record Searchlight, owned by Scripps Media, which is part of the global media power cabal. And their spineless, honorless reporters came out at one point looking for me, and I know who these guys are. I refused to talk to them because they would have instantly marginalized the whole event as if it was one man's doing, and it's not. It's not. I'm a spoke in the wheel, just like everybody else standing out there. I'm just a spoke in the wheel. So I insisted that they talk to everybody else there, which they did in their usual honorless way. So let's look at the chief of this band of honorless, spineless, so-called journalists. So we have a story posted yesterday by the Searchlight. Some 60 to 70 people protested the Record Searchlight this morning because they believe the local media is stonewalling the public on so-called climate engineering. You have to add terms like that when you're a spineless media person, because that tends to start marginalizing it. So-called. Even though GeoEngineering was the cover of Newsweek yesterday, it's the topic the front and center topic of discussion by the entire climate science community, but they have to put these little terms in there because they have no spine. The group, about 60 to 70 as of 10:45 a.m., showed up at the corner of Twin View Boulevard and Constitution Way. Skip past that. They planned to picket in front of KRCR, which we did. This is the TV channel in Northern California. They put a quote in there: "We are just trying to help get the media focused on what we are doing and our cause, to stop putting it way out there in the corner that this is something that is a tinfoil hat wearer's subject." He quotes one person as saying, "We are concerned citizens that they are trying to, and we are trying to raise awareness." That's the only quote they gave from this many people standing in the rain in front of their so-called media institution. And then they follow with this. Record Searchlight editor Silas Lyons, the epitome of spineless human being, says the paper loves the First Amendment and welcomes people who turn out in the rain to peacefully assemble and have their voice heard. And then he goes on to say this, quote, as the newspaper of record for this community, we have a duty to avoid being a platform for fully discredited statements passed off as fact. There is simply no credible evidence of a vast government conspiracy to poison our air, and we would be derelict if we covered the subject as if it were anything other than what it is, a conspiracy theory. There. All our signs say geoengineering, never mentioned, by the way. How did he get there? Did anybody say that to him? I don't think so. Everybody there was very versed on our solid foundation of science. These people are criminal. They are absolutely criminal. And why are they criminal? Why did they get away with this? Because too many in our community sit on their backsides and do nothing. Now, again, I'm grateful for those who showed up, and we made a dent, and we'll have a YouTube that will be very damning for these media institutions. But so many in our community have something else to do when it's so critical for them to show up. They won't respond with written letters. They won't contact. They just cheer from the sidelines. That's not going to get this ship afloat. It's not. Now, again, the people that showed up have done a lot of good, and we will make a lot of headway from what happened, because we have, from the TV news station especially, we have their media people stating on the record that our event in Redding on the 21st that had city officials at it, county officials, scientists, and about 500 members of the community was not newsworthy to them. They'll cover a lost dog or a lost cat, but they won't cover an event like this. We have them on film stating this. And then the only rebuttal they put on the 7 o'clock news, or the Channel 7 news, was that they report anything that matters. So they didn't respond to anything that happened that day. And what they said on camera is, again, quite damning. And we'll put this out as soon as we can get the editing done. Now, all the while, again, we have the entire climate science community talking about geoengineering. We have 200 governments around the globe in Peru right now talking about geoengineering. So this is a front and center topic of conversation, and that's why, again, I state, as I have so many other times, that's why semantics are important. Use the science terms. Even if the media ignores it, like the media story I just read, at least they're not using that term chemtrails because we didn't use it. And the second they use that term, if we would have used it, people Google it, here's the government saying it's not so, that's the end of their investigation, and we make no headway. But now, at least they titled the article with Climate Engineering Believers Protest. At least they have a term that will lead to some science instead of chemtrail conspiracy. So the terms do matter. And that's where the ideology in our ranks is sometimes very challenged by people who insist on using a term that doesn't help our cause. That's the bottom line. What helps the cause? So we have the Weather Channel, just like our media here. Now they're doing a second marathon. They did a marathon last weekend of reality shows. A marathon of reality shows over the weekend. Not a single bit of weather, just reality shows from Fat Guys in the Woods. I'm not making that up. That's the title, Fat Guys in the Woods. To prospectors and some sort of supernatural weather show. Is that why we have the Weather Channel? So thankfully, Greg is organizing a protest for the Weather Channel that hopefully will help to expose them if people show up, because all the while this is going on, and our climate is being completely skewed. Now we have again, very off-the-rails situations happening with the methane release, a total change in these forecast or scheduled weather for the continental U.S., at least for the moment. And that could change again tomorrow. I stress that. Because I say there's a total change in the scheduled weather, and there is, if they change that in a day or 2 or 3 days, it doesn't mean what I said today was wrong. It means that somebody changed the game again. So everybody has to look at their compass heading every single day because the game changes every single day. It's not the same. If you play football, do you do the same play every single day, every single game? The same pass, the same maneuvers? No. The game changes. You have to change with it, or you have no clue what's going on in the game. So while the walls close in, the climate's disintegrating, and a lot of people in our own ranks say it's all fine, it's all made up, it's all make-believe, the government is moving toward... Can't hide it much longer. The planet is dying by the day. So again, it's up to us, it's up to all of us to stand and make our voices heard. And that includes, if we are a community of people in this fight, that includes policing our own community with people who are in this fight for reasons that are clearly not to help the fight. Their own personal, psychological issues are getting in the way, and that doesn't help our fight. So as a community, it's up to all of us to stand for what's right. If something's wrong or somebody's out of line, they should be told. I would want to be told. If I was doing something out of line, I would want my friends to tell me. I sincerely would. And they have. And I respect them for that. And that's the only way a community can stand. If those in the community take a stand, even within their own ranks. That's important. So, Russ, I want to go over things with you and Greg, but can you first announce the call-in number? And if people call in, please, have a concise question that we can answer and get at, so we can try to get at other callers. If you would, Russ, can you announce the call-in number?
Yeah, absolutely. The call-in number for those who want to call, just call 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And please keep your phone quiet until we call on you. Thank you.
Greg, they lost your signs. Now they found them. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, it's been kind of a stressful end of the week. We've had activist boxes sent out that haven't made it to their destinations. My signs for the Weather Channel event were supposed to arrive Wednesday. They didn't. Thursday, they didn't. That they were reported lost. Now they're reported found. And supposedly they're supposed to deliver on Monday. We'll see. Hopefully not with a hole in the center of them from a forklift or some other kind of damage. But very interesting. And, in combination with the fact that your DVDs were lost, it's starting to look like something more than a coincidence, the DVDs that we sent, out to California for your events. And sadly, when they lose these DVDs, you spend a day running up and down the coast trying to replace them from people you had given in groups that you had given them to previously. So it's really, really a shame.
Well, yeah, it starts to get to be alarming when it happens, and especially the attitude of some of these people. The attitude of UPS Ground was astonishing to me. Not really concerned, and gee, we'll try to find him. Not even a callback in my case. They called back the shipper, but they didn't call me back, even though I tried repeatedly to reach them. So, it starts to have a bit of an odor to it. And certainly, there should be more people at the front of such a critical fight than just the size of the community we have. Whereas, this is a testimony to what I spoke about at the beginning of the show. Where are people in agencies, academia? There's so many people that know this is going on. There are so many. And the complacency is unbelievable. In fact, I just heard from some academicians I know yesterday, and this is their attitude. Well, yeah, the ship's going down. Yes, they're spraying, but that's just the government's attempt to try to make the best of a bad situation, and there's no fixing it, so let's just all pretend nothing's wrong and go on about our lives. That is the most abysmal attitude I could ever imagine. I wonder if these people have kids. I really wonder. Can you look at your child and say that? To me, that would be like if your child was out on a cliff somewhere, barely hanging on, and you say, "Wow, it's going to be really hard to reach him. It's going to take a lot of trouble, and it's probably not much chance of saving him. So I'm just going to walk away." Is that acceptable? If I had one chance in a million, I would climb out on that cliff and do whatever I could. One chance in a billion. I'm not going to sit from the sidelines and pretend that there's no chance. We don't know everything. We absolutely don't. No matter how dark the horizon is, we don't know what elements are in this equation that may yet fall in our favor. We don't know how miraculous the planet may be if it's given a half a chance, which it does not have now, does not have while it's being tossed into the ocean with a climate engineering straitjacket on it. It has no chance. And there's been a huge sea change in whatever they're doing. This is why I stress to people: you have to look at data constantly. Look at some of the weather maps, some of the long lead. Educate yourself slightly. It doesn't take much work. Put off some of the things you don't need to do and figure out what the hell's going on around you. I'm looking at for next Friday, December 12th. I'm looking at the ham weather maps. I have a lot of sources for data, and I compare them all. I don't look at any one. I compare them all and see how they match. Now, right now, it's showing temperatures in what has been the coldest part of the country, parts that had 40 degrees below normal, and now it's showing 30 degrees above normal about next Friday. So if that happens, will people look at that and say, something radical is going on? Will they compare that? Will that feed into their equation so that they stop fighting about and whatever they're fighting about and slinging mud wherever they're slinging it, and look at real hard data? It's up to all of us to do that. It's up to all of us to look at facts. So anyway, Greg, sorry to go on a rant, but right now things are happening that are very, very, very different and more critical and more dire than anything we've ever seen, and people have to start looking, and a lot of people in our community are not doing that, and we need them to do that. Look at data, get active, and make a credible voice heard everywhere you can. Greg, sorry to cut you off, but you're working on the Weather Channel situation. You've got your signs now. What can we do to help to raise awareness for that event, which is really critical, and to get people there?
Well, hopefully we can put the word out again on Facebook. I already boosted a post several weeks ago, just kind of as a feeler to see how many people would be interested in participating, and got some nice feedback, really, people that said that they would come from all the way up the East Coast, which was nice to hear. I think any promotion that we can do on your site, Dane, and on Russ's site, and once we get a date set, and once we actually receive the signs on Monday, I may have to paint the signs myself before this is all over, but anyway,
you have access to GeoWatch, Russ. I'm sure you'll help Greg with this effort too, right?
Sure, whatever I can do, absolutely.
So, again, this is where that event is so important for anybody who lives in a reasonable driving range around that event. It's imperative to be there. And what was disappointing yesterday, and again, we had a great turnout with great people, made a great impact considering the rain and everything else, but there's people that drove 6-7 hours came, people that lived 2 miles away didn't. People who claim to be activists, people who claim to be against geoengineering, people who have thrown a lot of mud, in our particular case and in our particular community, at some of us, saying that we're not doing anything, and yet we're doing this all the time, and they don't show up for these events. The hypocrisy is unbelievable in our own movement at times. So I hope people, again, it's about standing for what's right within one's own community and also showing up for the party, showing up. So, and this event here we did in Northern California was important. What Greg is working on is much more important still, much more important.
Well, especially when you see John Coleman, Dane, and Russ just flat out lying to the camera, thinking that we as Americans are so ignorant and stupid. They underestimate their audience. People are waking up, and we are going to hold them to task when we set a date for this thing. We've got all our ducks in a row, and we're ready to go. We try to leave nothing to chance. And when we're ready to hammer these guys, we're going to hammer them hard. I've got a good core group Dane, you and I have discussed this, and hopefully we'll get a great turnout and make our voices heard.
Let's since you bring up John Coleman, I want to plug that into what I've been raving about this whole show. John Coleman was posted all over as some oracle of truth because he says something that some people want to hear, that the planet is cooling, which is absolute nonsense, but they post him anyway, even though Coleman has done hit pieces on climate engineering activists, saying that anybody who believes that they're spraying anything in our skies is a tinfoil hat-wearing nutcase. So why in the world, you have to ask yourself, why in the world would anybody in our movement, whatever you think of the climate, why would they post something like that from someone like that? Why in the world would they do that? Now, John Coleman refused to debate me on the air. He was invited by a national radio show announcer, Jack Blood, to discuss the issue of climate engineering with me on the air after Coleman did a 5-minute hit piece calling climate engineering, anti-climate engineering activists what I just mentioned, tinfoil hat-wearing nutcases. Coleman refused. He refused because he knows that he is wrong. He knows he's wrong, and yet we have people in our own community posting things from Coleman. How about Tim Ball? You can look up Tim Ball. He's the one more of the oracles of truth of, well, let's ignore all the facts. Let's ignore our sense of reason, the film footage from the ground, places around the globe, and total meltdown other than the geoengineered cool-down areas. But we have one or two people saying that it's not happening, so let's take Tim Ball. Case in point again, people in our own community posting nonsense from this guy. Same thing with Tim Ball. Refused to debate me on air, was challenged by Vinny Eastwood, great guy. Vinny Eastwood is a very articulate radio host who's fought very hard for the common good. Vinny asked Mr. Ball to discuss the issue of climate engineering with me on the air, and Mr. Ball refused because he flatly denies the issue. So why would anybody in our community post people like that? And that absolutely is confounding to me. So again, it's up to people in our own community to look into posts, to look into data at least a little bit as your time permits, so that none of us are doing what the rest of the community does, our national population does, because they heard someone say that climate engineering or, quote, chemtrails is nonsense, therefore they don't have to look. That feels good to believe it's nonsense, because who would want to believe they're being sprayed like a lab rat? So that's what they choose to believe. And at that point it becomes a religion. And religions like this are only harmful. I'm not faulting anybody in the spiritual community, but I'm saying when we throw our sense of reason out the window and we don't use it, I don't care what institution you subscribe to, you are doing exactly the opposite of what any creator would want you to do, to use your most important gift of all, your sense of reason. Russ.
Dane, we do have a console full of people.
I want to ask you first in the Christian community, because I know you're in that community, and aren't you around people, and I'm not faulting the Christian community or any community of spiritual belief, but I know you must be surrounded with, or you must be exposed to people who have turned off their sense of reason in your community. You must see that.
Yeah, I see it both ways, and I see the same thing happening in the Christian community that's happening in the rest of the community is a polarization. There are those who are gravitating towards, I don't want to believe anything that's uncomfortable, but there is another group of people that are embracing the truth and saying, you know, the evidence is there, and it makes sense what they're doing. Not that it's a good thing, but it makes sense because the evidence is there, and we see it. So what I see happening in society is the same thing I see happening in the Christian community, is the polarization of two groups of people.
Polarization can only come, and I'm not picking on any particular faith system at all. The polarization can only come when people turn off their sense of reason and turn on their bias. That's the only way it can come. Otherwise, there would be some meeting at common ground of things that cannot be disputed reasonably and rationally. It can't happen any other way. And from a spiritual perspective also, and I've been exposed to this a lot, not just from any particular community, but all of them in the faith communities, from the Buddhists to the Christians, and I've talked to them all. this is all in bigger hands. In fact, some have even insinuated that it's somehow going against the Creator to try to take a stand on these issues. What an absolutely pathetic viewpoint. When no belief system says that. No belief system says, sit down and do nothing because don't worry, it's all taken care of. It's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can. Just like our child out there on the cliff. It's in a spot that's so hard to rescue that maybe there's very little chance of rescuing that child. Do we just do nothing? What was the baby that fell down the well? I don't know how many people remember that. Maybe Faye or something. I can't remember. But the little baby that fell down the well tube, how in the world could they get that baby out? So they just give up? They put a cap in the well and walk away? No. And guess what? They saved her. And when I see how tenacious life is, as I've mentioned before, it'll spring from the smallest crack in the largest concrete jungle. It will find a way to grow. We can't give up. So, again, I hope people in all these communities realize that if there's any reason for us to be here at all, it's to stand up and fight with everything we have for the common good until our last breath. Sorry, Russ, go ahead. You can pull anybody on right now if you want.
Okay, no problem. I was just going to say, I think that, this is human nature because the German philosophers said that first the truth is resisted, then it is violently opposed, and then it is accepted as being self-evident. And I think what happens is when the 100th monkey syndrome kicks in and you have enough people that finally accept a certain belief, then it becomes comfortable for the rest to join in. And the problem in the world is we have too many followers. We don't have enough leaders. The reason we have too many followers is because we don't have enough courage. It takes courage to stand up against the crowd, just like these experiments you've seen where children are shown a blue square on a chalkboard. The teacher says it's red, and none of the children have the guts to lift up their hand and say, no, that's not red, that's blue. And it's a very sad situation. And as I've said before, you cannot have freedom without courage. And along another lines, Dane, I will also pitch in here is that Newsweek came out with an article talking about some of the proposals for saving the Earth. And this is astonishing. They don't talk about what's going on now, but they talk about all the stuff they might want to do in the future. Newsweek talks about a paper released in 2012 by Matthew Leo, a philosopher and ethicist at New York University, that talks about genetic engineering, spraying the aerosols from the sky, or putting things in the food that cause humans to grow shorter so they're less consumptive. This is the kind of stuff that mainstream media is putting out while they ignore what's right in front of our faces.
Well, again, while people are choosing to pursue their personal pleasures because they've been so well trained to do that, the amount of time we have left is waning by the day. So if we have any love for our children, then it's up to all of us to stand up. Russ, you can take that call.
All right, caller with your phone number that ends in 43. Who are we speaking with?
Hello?
Hi, caller with your number that ends in 43. If that's the last two digits of your phone number, you with us? Hello, last call. Caller that ends in 43, you with us? Okay, caller with your phone number that ends in 85. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, it's Jennifer in Michigan. How you doing?
Good, Jennifer. How are you?
Hey, Jennifer.
I'm not doing too bad. I apologize. I don't have an actual question. I couldn't seem to listen in unless I called. But I've been trying to hone my skills, and I've been pulling into some of my psychology background and looking at what works in getting people to engage and change behaviors. And some of the things Greg and I were talking about earlier was starting to ask people questions, making them think instead of just throwing information at them, like when you're talking to them one-on-one. And another thing is, too, when you look at, I hate to say it this way, but I was a preschool teacher for 10 years, and I walked away from that as thinking, well, a lot of adults are like tall 5-year-olds, and so we have to have kind of a similar approach. And with behavior modification, some of the things that I noticed is that the kids tend to act out more when you're trying to change the behavior before they give in. And so I think that the consistency and the persistency that we have to have with people we know, like our family members and our friends, is really important, because if we give up on them, then we're really losing out on people that potentially trust us, that should know us and trust us. So that's where I've been kind of looking, in addition to putting up flyers and talking to people that don't know me, is really honing in on the people that I do know personally and asking them questions like, you remember when mercury, we were told not to touch it if your thermometer broke? Yeah. Well, didn't you find it odd that they're now in vaccines? Like, if the government would never do anything like spray the atmosphere, why would that mercury be in vaccines if it was so dangerous? And it really makes people stop and think. They can't just say they would never do that anymore, because now they have an inconsistency in their head. So I'm trying to hone my skills, and if you have any other suggestions, because I don't work with large groups of people, I'm working with smaller groups. So if you have any other suggestions, I really would like to hear, because I am finding success, but I'm really feeling the urgency to reach more people more quickly. And this seems to be like it's a slow process. I don't know what else to do.
I think you said the key word, though, hone your skills. That's a very key word. A lot of people don't think along those terms. They simply keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And when you have an encounter with somebody, depending on how it goes, what you said, what they said, what you learned, you should incorporate that. So the next time you swing the sword of truth more articulately. At the same time, there are those people that are not willing or ready to wake up. And I would also argue that when you encounter such people, you can only do so much, and then it's time to move on. Because if you spend too much time on those that are unwilling to wake, then you may not ever get to those who are ready to wake, and they just needed the tiniest spark. So we have to find that balance, all of us, to again, in the course of honing your skill, that involves also continuing to look at the bigger picture, accept new data, not be stuck on former biases, things that we want to believe, but that's part of honing your skills, is looking at current data, changing any preconceptions that we all have. So, again, I salute your approach, and I would say continue to start those spot fires. And I want to commend Wanda Allen. I don't know how many, a lot of people know who Wanda is, and she's just made some great strides by continuing to bang on fresh doors. She's just gotten into a group that I think could be hugely helpful for us, and all they needed was a spark, and Wanda gave them that spark. And we need that. We need that. A lot of people are doing this. I'm grateful to all of them. But plant the seed. If it looks like the soil's not fertile enough to sprout it right now, walk on. Plant some more.
Okay. Because one of the things. Well.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of the things that I noticed was a lot of my friends and people that I know are sick, from fibromyalgia to MS, and so I started looking at their concerns. If I look at what people are already concerned about, and I start talking to them about those concerns and how much they're trying to feel better and how the spraying could potentially be working against that, that seems to be getting people's attention, because they're doing all these efforts to get better, and it's not working. Why is it working? What if?
Yeah, who our audience is, we should always be conscious of that. There's no question. I mean, that's part of planting the correct seed. You don't plant for example, a mango seed in the desert sand that doesn't grow. You have to plant a different kind of seed. So we all have to be conscious of that sort of consideration. So again, I salute what you're doing, and I would say keep looking at the bigger picture. And if you're hitting your head against the wall, even if it's with a family member, as Greg shared with us what he's encountered, what I've shared. My mother and only brother don't speak to me anymore, and you have to move on. My family is this community, people who care for the common good. So again, if there's no further point banging on a particular door, you move to another door. But thank you very much for all you're doing, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Jennifer.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jennifer. I would contribute also that fibromyalgia is known in the alternative health community as being associated with aluminum toxicity, and that's why your fibromyalgia supplements almost invariably contain malic acid, which is one of the most effective ways of removing aluminum from your body. Vitamin C is another. We have a question from the from the chat room. Somebody's asking how long Dane thinks it is until things will go crazy and we won't have time to participate, and until they become open about what they are doing and not try to hide it anymore. What does Dane think about that?
That's a hard question to answer because there's too many variables that we can't know, but I would say this, again, if we compare the car going 100 miles an hour that's 10 feet from hitting the concrete wall, there could be some variance when that car hits. If the foot is taken off the accelerator and the foot is put on the brake, perhaps it might slow that impact by a slight amount. But it's still going to hit, and hit very soon. And in fact, in regard to the human race, the foot is buried on the accelerator to the floor. So the government is moving into a position to start perhaps a hot war. Not a cold war, but a hot war. And that's an indication. And the kind of climate schedule maps we see right now, and I encourage people to look at these. Look at the NOAA long lead forecast maps. NOAA's maps are done by Raytheon. This is the weather, the scheduled weather done by the weather makers. These maps are scary. They're scary. They can't hide this much longer. And I would argue that they will play a big card soon. It is likely. I don't have a crystal ball. Again, I'm not speculating on or predicting anything because I can't know, but I would say that we should make every day count. We should make every single day count. We are racing to an intersection, trying to beat the train. And if we can get this issue out into the open, we could yet change the flavor of what we face. So we may have a week, a month, maybe several months before something very radical happens. But I would argue it's likely that links are going to start dropping out of the chain soon. There's too many links that are too critical right now. And so although I can't and would never try to give any particular time frame, I would say that it's likely, based on everything we see, quite close, and we should make every day count. Every day should count, and we should work on a common goal. And the greatest common goal we could have, the greatest thing we could yet accomplish at this late date, I would argue, is to expose climate engineering, which would then cause a paradigm shift of a magnitude that few could imagine in the right direction.
Very good. We have a number of callers waiting. I would also want to report for those in Philadelphia, we had a front move in that brought the rain that we are now having here. Before that front got here, just as it was shortly before it was arriving, many people reported the smell of burnt plastic or rubber in the air. And more and more people are starting to pick up on these odors that occur in front of these fronts or just on regular days of spraying.
On that particular statement, Russ, I've heard that basic description from people who don't know much about this issue, have certainly never heard anybody else say they smelled anything, and I'm hearing the same sort of description from them. So just to add credence to what you just said.
Absolutely. Caller with a number that ends in 27. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is Matt. How you doing?
Hi, Matt.
Hey, quick question. I'm a prepper, and I was curious. I just sort of new to the ball game on the geoengineering thing, and I was wondering if you guys had any advice as far as some particular things that I may want to think about as far as sort of my preparations. And then also, I'm testing my rainwater, and I was wondering if you guys knew the legitimate source to send it to.
Well, that's on the rain one. You don't want to tell them you're testing rain or why you're testing. That we know that some labs have compromised the test just because they didn't want to get in the middle of this controversy. And there are some good labs around, but you need to check their MDL, their minimum detection level.
Okay.
If it's more than, it should be down in the decimal points of ppb, parts per billion, or they show as UGL. So you want to make sure they have a low MDL, minimum detection level. Otherwise, there's not much point in testing. And a lot of labs, like National Lab, have raised their MDL 3,000%. So you need to have an awful lot of metal there before it even shows up. As far as preparing, again, if we can't stop this issue, all the preparation in the world won't do much for long. So the supplements Russ mentioned, I would have enough of those to keep chelating for as long as you can, and all the other basics I'm sure you already know. But the bottom line, again, we all have to jump into this battle, because otherwise all the preparation we do would be like having a stocked up cabin in the Titanic, and that won't help.
It feels that way.
Yeah, that won't help.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of us are needing this battle, but thank you for joining us in this. And how long have you known about this issue, man?
Just a couple of months, actually. So I'm actually working on a website now that'll be sort of focused on the prepper movement and geoengineering, exposing it to the preppers and the guys I know in my circles in that way. So, I've always thought there was quite a decent amount of corruption in the government, but this just seems to blow it out of the water. And I kept looking up at the sky and saying, what is going on? And then, one thing led to another, and I got kind of turned on to you guys. And, yeah, I'm ready to start trying to help the movement as much as I possibly can.
Matt, I would get as many brochures printed as you can afford to and circulate them everywhere you go, whether it be a restaurant. I don't know what your background is. My background early on was sales, so I don't have any problem with this, but we've got to get over our fear of confronting anybody and everybody with this topic and give them one of Dane's geoengineering brochures. Don't reinvent the wheel. That is a great brochure. I've given out tens of thousands of those in different locations, no matter where I am. Again, when I go to dinner, I give out 10 or 20 at a time, the grocery store, and that's how we could reach critical mass. And maybe when we reach critical mass, we can get enough people that would come together and march on Washington or whatever it's going to take to get this spraying stopped.
Well, I appreciate it very much, guys, all your work you're doing.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for that input. Thanks for joining our fight. We need people like you. You sound very articulate and concerned for the common good. So, again, my gratitude, and very, very honored to march with you, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. When I get the website up and running, I'll send you guys an email, and we can start spreading the word more. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Caller with your number that ends in 62. How are you?
How you doing? What's up, Dane? Red, this is Ty from East Texas.
Hey, Ty, how are you?
Good.
What's happening?
Hey, Dane, I'm going to need some more brochures and videos. They went out like hotcakes, so I'm going to need some more if y'all have some more. But I've got some quick PowerPoints, some updates, and then I've got some questions. What's been going on is we have the high altitude spraying, 8,000 plus, usually here in Texas. It's kind of ironic because right now we're watching about 3 planes spraying paint trails over the sun, so they're doing the sun right now. What happens is during the night, as soon as the sun drops, I noticed that they start going at low altitude, and a lot of times you can't see if they're spraying or not. You can just see the light. Well, whenever the moon comes out, you can see that they're spraying as well. So I guess, it's just another layer to the onion, whatever they're doing. The blanket, when it gets right, a lot of people wonder, we can't really see if they're spraying because it's blanketing. A lot of times what I've noticed is when we have blanket cloud cover, they're actually spraying more. I guess it's part of, keeping it there. Because whenever the blanketing moves, you can see the remnants of the spray, and you can also hear a lot more jets going by when the blanketing happens. I posted a link to the effects of climate change or climate engineering. I believe it was a Science Journal link, and I posted it to this blog that a lot of my colleagues post on about other trade stuff. And it's kind of interesting because immediately after I posted it, I went back to my post to click on all the links to make sure that all the links are working, and it linked back to the Science Journal article, and it was removed. I mean, it wasn't 5 minutes that I posted that link, and then it was removed, and it kind of took a chill at my spine. Just kind of lets me know that there's things that are going on. People are watching. One of the strongest PowerPoints I'd like to add to the fray. That's also a question is that we've got these towers that are just popping up everywhere. They kind of remind me of the Empire in Star Wars.
You talking about RF frequency towers, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are just loaded to the tilt, and I don't know if they are, but like y'all were talking about last week, once you start realizing certain things, it's just
the whole system it's in runaway mode right now, Ty. I mean, you have right now increased spraying around the globe. You have ever more dire warnings from the frontline, in this case, the methane scientists, the AMIG group, and again, you have to sip the baby from the bathwater. The AMIG group has solid data from what's happening on the ground, but then they call for climate engineering as if that hasn't been happening for 65 years and doing nothing but harm. So everybody has to learn to sift the baby from the bathwater. But yeah, we're all seeing ramped up spraying. The climate is unraveling by the day. The climate engineering will make it worse, but I appreciate your observations, Ty, and what and the posting you're doing. Is there any particular question we can answer for you before we're going to try to catch a couple more?
Well, I just want to tell everybody, whenever we're trying to tell people about this, we're passing out flyers. Don't give up. Like Russ was saying, the teacher says the color is red, even though it's blue. That's pretty much, what the norm is right now. But don't give up. The pastor to our church, I tried to talk to him about it. He was like, I don't believe in all of that. I kept hammering away. I made him watch me a video, and now he's starting to come around. So, at first, you might get rejected, but just keep going and keep going. And like you said before, Dave, they're not going to be able to hide it much longer because the way they're ramping it up, it's just getting more and more obvious. And sooner or later, so just, I'm going to tell everybody, don't give up. Just keep hammering away, and we got to keep letting people know and bringing this to attention to other people.
Thank you for your persistence, Ty. Thank you, and keep that up. And you can email me, and we'll try to, make sure you got everything you need to keep doing what you're doing. So thank you for your persistence, Ty, and I'll wait to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ty.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you, Ty, for calling. Thank you. This is an all... Oh, go ahead, Greg. Do you have something to say?
Well, I wanted to bring up the point that we did set up a GoFundMe site, GoFundMe.com/stop the spraying, if you want to participate in helping bring awareness to this issue. We're putting up our first publicly funded billboard on Sunday night, actually. It's going to be seen by 700,000 viewers per month on I-75 just south of Atlanta. So, anybody that wants to contribute $5 or $10 or $50 or whatever you can afford to contribute, go to the GoFundMe.com/stop the spraying and make a contribution so we can keep putting these billboards up to reach that critical mass that we need to reach as quickly as possible.
Greg and Mary Lou Harris are going to be spearheading that effort. Greg's in this absolutely for the common good, has contributed a massive amount of his own resources to this, and he's contributing even more than that now by trying to spearhead this effort. So, again, the billboards are a hugely helpful part of our equation. So we'll have the link to what Greg's doing on the GeoF site soon, and I think Russ is going to link that as well, and we'll try to help in that effort, Greg. We'll try to help completely with that.
Absolutely. We've got about 7 minutes left. We have an all-time busy record today. We have more phone calls than we can probably take, but please don't hang up. We've got more people listening. Next caller with your number that ends in 40. Who are we speaking with?
Yeah, hi, guys. It's Steve from Nikiski, Alaska.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, guys. I wanted to ask a question of Dane or any of you guys. If I want to approach my local meteorologist with a question and get it on camera or, on audio, their answer, what's the one question I should ask them? If I try to keep it simple and short and just get a question out to them, what should it be, word for word?
I can contribute to that, and Greg and Russ, you're welcome to take a shot too. And I would ask them this: why in the world would I believe, Mr. Meteorologist, that this is not happening when it's the frontline discussion in the entire climate science community, when the U.S. military states climate change is the greatest national security threat of all, and given the fact that we have the mountain of data we have, both empirical and anecdotal, why in the world would I believe this isn't happening? I would make him answer the question in that manner.
That's good. I would add to that, Steve, that what I would ask them to say, why are we having the very minerals, the very elements show up in rainwater in all of the places that we're seeing visible spraying? Why are we having all these elements that they said that they would spray in the future suddenly show up at the same time the spraying is showing up? Greg, anything?
I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, Russ. That's exactly right. Why do we have a mountain of data, aluminum, barium, strontium, arsenic, mercury, lead, nanoparticles? How can that be denied? How can we have jets, live footage of jets turning on and off their spraying? There's just a mountain of evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, to support our cause, and there's no place for denial.
I think we're saying the same thing, all of us, Steve. That, you know,
I think so.
all those are expansions of the same point. And again, make him give you a credible answer as to why in the world would we possibly believe this isn't happening, because our government wouldn't do that to us. Make him give you some sort of a completely unsupported answer like that, and then you'll undermine the ground on which he's standing. But I would try that.
I'm going to do this, and I urge people to do the same. Confront your meteorologists.
Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable.
They're obviously all nervous. You can watch your meteorologists lately, and they're all nervous.
They get more nervous by the day, and that's where, let's go back to, we tried to make a little bit of a launching pad for Greg's effort with our effort yesterday, and again, the YouTube, I think, from this will help. We'll try to get that as quick as we can. But Greg's effort in Atlanta, hugely important. Hugely important. I hope everybody helps get the word out for that. And anybody who's close enough to drive and be there, we need you there. So, Russ,
I might head down there and join in. We'll see.
That's a huge effort, Steve, and you've already made a...
That'd be great, Steve. You'd be welcome.
I'd love to come down and join in. We'll see if I can make it.
Big effort.
You're welcome.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you,
time for one more, Russ?
Yeah, thank you for the call. Yep, we got a couple minutes left. We've got a bunch of callers still waiting. Caller with your number that ends in 23. Before we get to that, I just want to chime in. Dane, I've watched the sky all my life. High bypass turbofans, which are fitted on all these large jets, do not produce trails. I have watched the sky all my life. They produce a black soot, a fine black soot, which you'll see at the airport. And there's a whole bunch of explanations that I've documented that I talk about, but the bottom line is these are basically prop engines, except the fan is inside a duct, which is why they're called ducted turbofans. So burning kerosene doesn't produce humongous plumes of water. It just doesn't happen that way.
I completely want to dovetail that, Russ, and back you up on that so many people still in our movement are mistaking shorter particulate trails for condensation. It's not condensation. You should almost never see a, quote, condensation trail except under the most extreme circumstances for all the reasons Russ just mentioned. So there are definitely many short versions of the sprayed particulate trail. So we need to keep that in mind. We should almost never see, or very seldom see, a, quote, condensation trail. Only the shortest lived, almost transparent.
Absolutely. And
even fighter jets, Dane, I had this discussion with my brother under certain conditions, and he told me, well, I used to see contrails behind me. Well, fighter jets, under certain conditions, it's a different type of jet engine. A little bit is a contrail, but it's still very rare.
Fighter jet, totally different engine, completely different combustion principles, and totally different animal. But, and I know we're almost about out of time, but I want to stress this before we go, and I apologize to the callers we didn't get to, but everyone needs to do some investigation about the bigger picture, about data that a lot of us have stopped examining. A lot of people are just marching with the same conclusion they've had from the very beginning, and that doesn't work, and that makes us just like the people who deny the aerosol spraying because someone told them somewhere along the line it's only condensation. They've never looked. They've never looked at data. They've never examined the reason for their opinion. We all have to have a reason for our opinion, period, or otherwise our opinion is not supportable. So I hope everybody does that, and everybody in the community helps to help others in the community to behave properly, help with the fight, and have a reason for their opinion.
Absolutely. It pays to be a little bit educated. I'm sorry for the rest of the callers. We are out of time for today. Please call back next week. We'll be here at 12 noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time at ucy.tv/GW. Please share this link with everyone you know. ucy.tv/GW. Please call again next week. We'll see you here on ucy.tv. This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio. This is Russ Tanner on behalf of Dane Wigington and Greg Palin. We'll see you next week.
Hey, Dane.